centuries go by, and we'll just go to the kind of a bottom line in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says, the Mechaber, the Rav Yosef Karo says, Ner Chanukah, you put it just like the Mishnah, Petach hasamuch l'Reshut Rabim mibachutz, outwards, and it goes to some more details, and then he says, ובשעת הסכנה שאינו רשאי לקיים המצוות מניחו על שולחנו ודיו. So it already gives an interpretation to what שעת סכנה is, and it says times where you're not allowed to practice mitzvot. It's interesting because when we speak in general about שעת סכנה, we think of usually of the Zoroastrian religion, the one that fire was the central part of the worship, and in their days of holiday, at least that's what the commentaries say, that no other type of light or fire was allowed. So that is considered Shat Sakana. It's historically, it's not. I'm not sure it fits exactly the right dates, but in general, we understand there's a time of gzira. There's a decree that you can't publicly practice mitzvah, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch reflects here. Right? Now, if we continue, actually, we'll go back from Shulchan Aruch, but we'll listen to some Rishonim. So the Or Zarua. Okay. He lives in Vienna in the 13th century. He says, Rabbi Yitzchak MiViena, very, very important posek. In his Hilchot Chanukah, he says, nowadays, when there is no danger, I don't know why we don't light in our yards. I don't know why we don't light outside. Okay, the lake a second, we know there's no danger. I don't know why we don't do it in the original form of lighting outside. What we hear from the Or Zarua is, first of all, that there is a prevailing custom of lighting Hanukkah candles in the home. Like I'm imagining it on the dining room table. And he also describes the historical conditions that say, in fact, in our time today, and look, it could have been a short-lived time, but he says, in our time, really, there's no danger to light candles outside. And yet, this is what we do. I don't know why. Okay? Just to fill out some more Rishonim here, we have Rabbeinu Yerucham. He says, in our time, we light candles inside, and some he shows different options, but then he says we don't really do it outside because the shchichi goyim veganavim. There we have the Gentiles outside, and they're also thieves. Might be Jewish thieves, I don't know, but people that are not candle friendly or candelabra friendly. And then he adds another consideration, and he says, he says, one of the descriptions is that you put it on the side of your door where you could be surrounded by mitzvah. You'd have a Hanukkah lights on one side and a mezuzah on the other side. But on the outer gate that turns outwards, even though that gate it has a tzurat petach, it might really need a mezuzah. We don't put a mezuzah there because the vandalists take it. They're whether just to abuse us or to steal. We don't put mezuzah there because they get taken. So if we would light the candles there, we wouldn't have the benefit of being surrounded by mitzvah. That we have when we have it in the inner opening of the home. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch that we read before, we hear the Rema writing in Poland, saying, בזמן הזה שכולנו מדליקים בפנים, okay, it goes on describing a few details, but as he speaks, he says, these days when everybody lights inside, and nobody sees it from the outside, etc., etc. So really describing a given situation where nobody likes outside. Okay? And when we asked ourselves why, so we heard the Orzoro say, I don't know why, it's not dangerous. And we heard Rabbeinu Rucham say, they're thieves, they're all kinds of vandalists, and also we want to be surrounded by mitzvot, and if we do it outside, it wouldn't work. And another idea that comes up later by Aruch HaShulchan, this is like 19th century, oh, even later, 20th century, 19th. He says, these days we don't light outside, even though it's not dangerous by us, but it's not something that could be done because in all the countries we live in, he's speaking in Eastern Europe, Hanukkah, it's December. It's cold and it's snowy and there's strong winds and you can't light candles outside. Okay, so now what we have added on is the weather. And it would be an interesting thought to think, what other mitzvot do we have that are originally supposed to be done outside, and maybe we choose to bring them in or not? And the obvious comparison is Sukkot. So we have to ask ourselves, why do we insist that the Sukkah stays outside and Chanukah not? Well, the obvious answer would be, I'd love to have a conversation with you. It's not possible right now, but it's this is the Oraita, this is the Rabbanan. This has an option of doing otherwise. Sukkah doesn't exist as a sukkah if it has a roof on top of it. This is December. This is October. There could be many, sukkah. People didn't sleep in the sukkah, but they didn't manage to eat a kezait for a very short time. Maybe lighting Hanukkah candles is longer. A lot of thoughts that could come up. It's an interesting way to test out the situation. So we hear of this idea of goyim, of thieves, of cold weather, of being surrounded with mitzvot, and also this idea of we don't know why, even when there's no danger. Now, one of our major issues, or the one that I'll choose to concentrate now on, is, and what do you do when you come back to Eretz Yisrael? And how do you relate to that? And I have to admit, I'm doing real cherry picking here. Okay, I just chose some poskim that I thought were interesting to notice. And first one here is Shut Minchat Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Yaakov Weiss, and he's originally he's post-Holocaust posek, and he started out in Hungary and Romania, and then he became Beit Din in England, and eventually he comes to Jerusalem and he becomes the Av Beit Din of what we call Ha'edah Charedit Yerushalayim. That's a hardcore Me'asharim Yerushalmi society, and he says he's also asking himself this question of, if it's not dangerous, so why are we lighting inside? And before I continue, I want to say that there's something about Hanukkah, the way people are used to their Hanukkah customs, that to a large extent, what a person grew up with sounds to him like the perfect way to do Hanukkah, and other ways sound strange. Like someone who grew up with Hanukkah candles on their living room table, for them, lighting outside is like, you leave the candles alone and you walk in, and then you don't feel the presence of Hanukkah throughout the time that the candles are lit. It's all, it's outside in the dark and you're not next to it. And how does that work? And for people who grew up with lighting Hanukkah candles outside, almost on the street, they look at the Hanukkah candles on the living room table and they say, What is that all about? What kind of persumanes is that? It's their experience is of standing with the neighbors and singing Mausur, or with neighbors that are different in different ways, and feeling like they're really doing persumanes. It's a very personal thing that has to do with what you're used to. Going back to Rav Weiss, okay, so he's speaking in Masharim, and he says this. Actually, I translated it. Here it goes. He says, I found a source for this in Megillat Ta'anit. Megillat Ta'anit is an old text, one of the most ancient Torah Sheba'al Peh texts. It's a list of dates where you don't say Tachnun, and like more celebratory dates. It's a long list, but the only ones that we have left are Chanukah and Purim. Anyhow, there are many different versions, not many, there are a few different versions of what is stated in Ta'anit, but one of them is what he quotes. It's not the regular one. He managed to find one that says this. I found a source for this in Megillat Ta'anit, where it stated it is a mitzvah to place it outside, and if one is afraid of scoffers, letzim, like people who mock you, who ridicule or belittle the practice of lighting candles, letz. Okay. Now, in other places it says goyim. It says, but in one of the versions it actually says letzim. We'll use the word scoffers. One should place it. So, if you're afraid of these people, one should place it at the entrance of his house from the inside. Okay. So he says, I found a source in Megillat Ta'anit that says it's not only in times of danger, it's also if you view the world outside as letzim, as people that are going to mock you. And now, in our time, it is not a time of danger, God forbid, but it is considered a time when there are many scoffers, letzim, and when that is the situation, one lights the candles from in the entrance from within. Therefore, the earlier generations, when the Torah was dear in their eyes, would place a Hanukkah candle on the outside, symbolizing the Torah as a light outwards, as your fountain, like yifutzu ma'ayonotecha chutza, may your fountains flow outwards. But these later generations, nowadays, he's saying, in which the Torah has diminished and its study has waned, and the sages of the generation have no strength to divert a person from his evil path. And on the contrary, if they don't, flatter him, or they have no remedy against those who rise against them. Wise and the people who are wise in that time will draw their hands away from illuminating with their Torah in the public domain. They will place a Hanukkah candle in their home, and it will suffice to answer for the transgressions of the people of their household alone. And all this is included in the Halacha of Mipnei Haleitzim.